Arlene. I'll put on my microphone, which is why I wear it. This for Arlene.
Oh yes, I forget she's hard here.
Good morning, Arlene. Gotcha. Okay. Oh, all right. How many people were here for last week's with Yangtze Rinpoche?
Yes.
Okay, good. If you missed it, it's on our YouTube channel, so I encourage you to watch. Marianne? Okay. So let's take a moment to settle in. Really try to let go of the busyness of getting here and the planning for later. And just bring your awareness to the body sitting here. Whatever sounds you hear, the temperature of the room, the fragrances you notice. And then find that sensation of the breath that's going in and out of the body. Either at the tip of the nose, your tummy rising and falling. And let your mind's attention rest there. Drawing it away from the past and the future. Try to generate a positive motivation, a positive intention to use your time well this morning. To be here with an open mind, an open heart, curiosity, attentiveness. recite the four immeasurables from the Gold Prayer Book. So pass them around, share if you need to. It's on page 34. Everybody got their reading glasses.
The bifocals, that's what you said.
May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So having happiness and the causes of happiness, wishing that for someone is the definition of love in Buddhism, and wishing folks to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering is the definition of compassion in Buddhism. Just a helpful tip. Gotta get that jargon down, so. Okay, so I wondered if anybody who was here last week for Yangtze Rinpoche's talk had any questions. Because it was kind of challenging if you weren't, I mean, it was a pretty traditional teaching on going for refuge and for confessing and rejoicing and offerings.
He was talking about the 7 limb factors.
Yeah.
I like that idea. I don't know too much about that.
Did any particular question? And then he talked a lot about the ego. Yeah.
I found it interesting when he was talking about if you're trying to decide, like maybe what the right thing is to do, or kind of detaching from your self-cherishing, that in your mind you're going, well, if I do this, then this, that you're not in the right, you're still self-cherishing.
Because you're still seeing what's in it for you.
Right.
Yeah.
You're trying to find the right truth, but there's still, it's hard to let go of everything and truly want other people happy if it's gonna be bad for yourself.
This is the key of trying to. The four immeasurables are about developing, immeasurable love, which means really wishing all living beings to be happy. Immeasurable compassion, which is wishing all living beings to be free of suffering. Immeasurable joy, which means really feeling joy at other people's joy. So, and then equanimity, which is meaning, this idea that we don't want more for our friends and loved ones than anyone else. It's just that we'd like all the same amount for everybody, including ourselves. We don't have to be left out of that picture. But that really being able to figure out, like you said, what's on any occasion, on what we should do, it's very hard to step back enough to take ourselves out of the picture. We tend to, without effort, bring ourselves into the picture, and just kind of go, there's sort of this, oh yeah, that'd be the right thing to do, but how can I protect myself in the same time? And sort of in there, inches back in. So, especially if we have a feeling that we might lose something in the deal, So, this trying to develop a sense of balance between our own needs and the needs of others is something that can be tricky, especially if we don't even recognize when our own interests are in the way. So that takes a lot of self-observation, of just noticing how we're thinking, you know, really developing the habit of noticing what perspective we're coming from, you know, through the day, so that we are much more aware of when it's, you know, something we want is involved, or something we don't want is involved. So, you know, like if someone asks for help and we don't want to do it, so we start looking at others who might be able to help. And we're not even able to look clearly to see if maybe we'd be the best person to help. Because our lack of interest in doing it ourselves is blocking our view, you know, so that we might suggest someone else, but we couldn't honestly be aware of whether or not we thought that was the best choice or not, because our self-interest would just block the way. We just wouldn't notice, because it wouldn't be convenient to notice. And this is, you know, that's just, so the more we get familiar with looking at how we think, and at what perspective, what angle, you know, and so I have to practice a lot with the idea of, if I took myself out of this picture, what would I think? If I wasn't one of the players, what would I think? You know, and that takes a lot of practice to just be able to keep stepping back further and further and further and further, see where you can kind of go, okay, I've kind of got the big picture view now. It's not that there's something wrong with taking consideration of your own needs. It's just that we do so much of it, and we're so well practiced at it, that we are not equal in taking consideration of others' needs in it. So we have an unbalanced view to begin with. So we want to look out for that. Why do we want to look out for that? I mean, why did we just think, well, of course. What might be the benefit? See, this is one of the things we want to figure out. Not a whole lot of help if the teachings are telling us to do something that we think, you know, yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah.
So, I noticed certain people will trigger something in me, and while I have to watch that and see what that is all about, it's okay to have boundaries if that happens. Like, I don't want to feel that way, you know, if I get triggered around this person. So, what about boundaries?
See, we talk about letting go of self-interest and immediately, hey, how about my boundaries? You know? This is who we are. This is what we have to watch out for. Because it's not that we shouldn't have boundaries. No, you know, of course. But we want to see what the motivation is. We want to check in to see if our desire for boundaries is actually going to get us where we want to go. Where do we want to go?
Perfection.
Oh, yeah, me too, but, okay, in the meantime,
I've said this probably before, but I feel like I know from experience that when I do something kind for other people, I feel really good. And when I do something that isn't kind, I feel really bad.
okay,
I
so
just
what does
know-
that have to do with where we're going?
Well, where we're going is, you know, why do we do things? Why do we think about others? Why should we be thinking about others? Because actually it's beneficial to ourselves
Right.
as well.
See, this is what's so cool, is that this is when self-interest comes into our favor. So if we would just recognize, that's a big just, you know, that our happiness actually is dependent on cherishing others, on bringing in their needs, being considerate of their situations, all of that kind of stuff, then we'd be less concerned about how to protect what's in it for me. Because what's in it for us actually arises from cherishing others.
Yes.
So this is what's challenging, you know? Go ahead, Judy.
Well, I just want to bring this up. A couple of weeks ago, I brought up a situation with the president of my association, and I was going to ask him to help me with the situation. And somewhere in the back of my mind, the fear was, I brought up fear, the fear was that I would get angry. That was the fear. I didn't get a chance to say that, but that was the fear. And that is exactly what happened. And I
That you got angry.
I got angry, yeah. Because, you know, when I looked at it, meditated on it, I swear that he didn't give me what I wanted.
Right.
That's what made me get angry.
Yeah, and this is why we want to always be checking up. We want to learn how to keep looking in our mind to see what perspective are we coming from. So if we're coming from, I want to get what I want exactly as I would like it to be, in exactly whatever form it is, then it doesn't matter what happens, we're not going to like the outcome. Because we've closed the door to anything else being a possibility of working. So we want to know that. If we've already decided that the resolution to a conflict or just a whatever, you know, is this, then if we hear anything but this, we've set up a situation for us to be disappointed or angry. Whereas it may turn out that that is just as good. But we can't hear that because we are just looking for this. Does that make sense? I mean, it sounds like really gobbledygook, so I'm checking. Okay, so this, well, I may not be able to come up with the perfect response for Judy.
No, it's not about that now. I mean, I asked my husband to join me because of my fear, and he said no. And he said no because he doesn't like this person, and he knew that it wouldn't go well if he came with me. But why couldn't I see that? You know, it's just like so
Well, you can,
interesting.
well, see, so the thing, the good news about this
Yeah.
is when these things happen, it is the perfect thing to sit and reflect upon. To be able to say, oh, these are the different things, all the causes and conditions came together, and these are what they were. This is what I brought to the picture, and this was the result. So maybe next time, I want to look at it differently. Doesn't mean it will come out necessarily better. It's just that, you know, because what's one of the things that we can, that in situations like this, not you in particular, just in situations in general, what can be one of the obstacles to our happiness in that situation?
Expectation.
Yeah, what kind?
What I want to see out of it.
Right. So like if we just like, what can all, if we ask for something, what's one of the possible answers?
No.
No. And we don't have control over that. I'm not gonna say anything here that's gonna say, if you do this, you'll always get a yes. That's not, the teachings don't tell us how to always get a yes. The teachings tell us how to perhaps handle a no. How to cope with that without wanting to kill the person or strangle them or send nasty letters to the board, you know, whatever. All of which might be appropriate.
That's something I've been working on lately, the anger. I'm like, all of a sudden, I get angry with the person behind the counter because they're not doing, and I'm reflecting and I'm thinking, why am I doing this? And then I'm trying to learn from the teachings, wait a minute, don't be angry at them. Have compassion, why are they, you know, so I'm trying to learn from.
One of the things we can do is, one of the things we can recognize is that when we have a disturbing emotion arise, like what, for example, let's list some disturbing emotions. Anger, jealousy,
Oh, jealousy.
fear, pride, frustration,
Arrogance.
arrogance, shame. Well, it depends on shame, on how guilt, shame and guilt. Shame is actually a virtue in Buddhism, but you have to know what the definition is. Because it's not the same. So, embarrassment is another one that's a virtue in Buddhism, if you know what the definition is. So, okay, I'm sorry. Impatience. So what we can do is when we recognize that this state of mind has arisen, we're out of control. We are under control by that state of mind. So now we can't really trust whatever we're thinking. So, because those negative states of mind, because there also happens with positive, infatuation, it's a positive state of mind that's also distorted. Positive in the sense that we like it. So, not positive in the sense that it's going to bring us to happiness, because it's not going to. So that's another jargon. In Buddhism, things that bring us closer to happiness or towards happiness or happiness are positive. Things that bring us to more suffering, increase our suffering, are negative. So it's not this is always this, and that is always this. It's really, there's a lot of nuance in it. So anyway, so that's why I say infatuation, we may feel positive when we have it, but it's not considered a positive state of mind. It's considered something that disturbs the mind. It agitates, it stirs it up. So no matter what it is, whether it's impatience or anger or hatred or greed, that's stirring up the mind, that in that moment we are exaggerating either the positive aspects of something or the negative aspects of something. And we're not able to see balance at all. We're just focused on either what we don't want to have happen or what we do want, or just whatever. It might be we just don't like their voice. But it's just that we're not in control of reason or wisdom. So we have to kind of step back and let that pass in order to better evaluate the situation, which is why often we have to look back. So you look back at what happened and then go, okay, what can I learn from this? What can I do differently? Whatever. Mostly so that we don't get angry the next time. It has nothing to do with changing the outcome out here. It's the fact that feeling angry is not nice. It feels terrible. Our teachers like to say it's it's like drinking poison and hoping the other person will die. It's not the most effective strategy. So we want to look at how we reduce the conditions that cause anger to arise. And it's an inner process, because we think it has everything to do with out here, controlling other people, controlling other events, just controlling, when it really is about understanding within ourselves, what is it that is causing this to arise in me? And the teachings basically say it comes out of an ignorant view of how things exist, which cause us to have a lot of self-cherishing, thinking that that's going to be, that's what we have to take care of in order to be happy. It's everything that has to do with wants and whatever of the self. But then that from that sense of self, this distorted sense of self, we have what's called the 8 worldly concerns, and that drives us in everything. We like gain, we don't like loss. We like things that are pleasant, we don't like things that are unpleasant, or suffering and pain, to get it, to the worst case scenario. We like, we want to be famous, not infamous, although I guess there's some people who infamous is better than nothing, So, and we want praise rather than blame. So those are the 8 worldly concerns that drive us. And they're all about getting what we want in being separated from what we don't want. You know? But when we come from that perspective, it makes, you know, it's just because how often do we get exactly what we want?
Hardly ever.
And it's not under our control, is it? It's under, you know, I mean, you know, other people do things, we kind of go, oh, that's not what I want. But, so if our happiness or our dissatisfaction or discontent relies on what's happening out here, it's always going to be, it's more likely it's going to be a state of discontent. Because what's happening to us or what we're, you know, the work, whatever, isn't going to be perfect. And not only that, it's not going to be from our perspective. You know, it's not being, that's not how it arises. It's everybody's causes and conditions coming together. So if we, though, can start to look within to find our peace of mind and cultivate peace of mind and recognize that we are creating a lot of our own suffering by the way we think about things, then we have a lot more control over, you know, having disturbing states of mind arise. So, that makes sense, sort of? Okay.
So, so after this whole experience, there's part of me that kind of wants to apologize, but I'm kind of staying away.
Well, whatever. I mean, I don't have a right answer for you. It's really about looking within and figuring out what's the right answer for you. You know, because it really does depend. Everything in Buddhism is about how the way things exist is as a dependent arising. You know, so an unpleasant interaction with someone else depends on all sorts of things happening. And so some part of it is our side, right? With what we bring to it. And then, so that's actually what can determine our experience. So you could have a perfectly reasonable, you know, okay experience while somebody else is having a terrible experience in the same interaction. Because we don't have a control over how they respond to us. You know, we can be a condition. I mean, if we're going in and cursing someone out, guess what? That might be a condition for them not to be happy with us. You know, so how we act matters, absolutely. But it's just that whether we get what we want or not get what we want doesn't have to be the criteria to our happiness. We can start there and end there and be there the whole time. Yeah.
So, like, the way I'm understanding it is, it's more of like either being open about your expectations or lowering them, or don't have
Or not having them?
or not having them at all, and just kind of go with the flow, because you're setting yourself failure if you have this expectation, you don't get it, then you're gonna get, you know, either disappointed or frustrated. But just go into the situation with open mind of wherever this lands, and that kind of helps you.
No, you see, this is the problem. We have to step back and start to understand that what's happening has nothing to do with our peace of mind. So, yes, you're correct in that the more we can just be, I hate this word, there's got to be another word, equanimous.
Tongue twister.
Anyway, the more we can have a sense of equanimity about what's happening, you know, then whatever's happening doesn't have to be a condition for our unhappiness or our happiness.
Phlegmatic?
I'm sorry,
Phlegmatic?
I don't know what that is.
I think that's the word.
No. Well, look it up. That doesn't sound any better than equanimous. Sorry. So, and it's just as likely that I won't be able to pronounce it. We need very easy words to pronounce for my mouth. Yeah.
Would that be the same as
Yes.
Same concept?
Yeah, but we just have to be careful, or at least I think we have to be careful with the word detachment. Because detachment might sound disinterested or, this is tricky. A Buddha, you could say, is probably disinterested, really, 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 really doesn't care one way or the other. Because his peace and his bliss is never, it's not changeable, it's irreversible. But for us, it's more about understanding that what's really important cannot be determined in this moment or that moment or the next moment, Whereas we kind of take some of our moments and make them really big events, and that's how we create this expectation, like these outcomes. Oh, this has to happen, or this is going to be a really big problem. It's not that things don't happen that aren't big problems. It's more about our response. It's sort of like, okay, so this has happened. I can either choose to let this ruin my life forever, or I can figure out what I need to do next. A calm mind helps us figure out what to do next. So instead of taking it personally, like, why did this happen to me? It's, where we can stand back, this is that detachment, but stand back and go, oh, it happens to people all the time. Why not me? I'm not exempt for things going badly. So it's just understanding that sort of like, oh, it's my turn. Now I'm making light of it, because it is kind of funny when you step back and look at how we grasp at things to, it should happen this way and it should happen this way, because it's me. So I want it to happen this way. But of course, that's not how it feels in the moment. In the moment, we have this sense of tragedy, and really, and sometimes just deep pain, because deep painful things happen, don't they? So it's not that we can just create situations where we just don't feel. That's not even the goal. The goal is to quit feeling this sense of separation between each other, as if what you want is going to interfere with what I want. So I'm always on guard to you, and I'm not picking on you, but that this is this way of, we put on this armor of self-protection and go out in the world, and actually even when we're talking to ourselves. So, and what the Buddha suggests is, if we throw that armor off and put on the armor of loving kindness, joyous effort, these kinds of things, that will serve us better in reaching less suffering and more happiness. So, is that a question? Question or a comment? No. So, that's my job. Okay, where did we start this?
Asking about
Boundaries. Okay, but we first started before boundaries.
anger.
Well, what if I don't want to have to can't even think of something funny. All right, so boundaries. What do we mean by boundaries? You started it with Melissa. What do you mean by boundaries?
Well, protecting yourself, your feelings. I mean, there's different scales. I mean, you could be with someone who you know is abusive, but you don't want to put them in that category necessarily. But you also know that if someone's not working on themselves and watching what they do and have no self-insight, there's habits of mind that they're not aware of maybe, and that it affects you. So you have to.
Why does it affect you?
Because maybe they're.
Oh, it can't have anything to do with them. Why does it affect you?
Well, I just thought.
What arises in you?
I didn't get angry last night, but I took my grandchildren, we were in a pet supermarket, and the 7-year-old jumps up into the cat,
I really don't need the story. What I
Okay.
wanna know is what arose in you?
uncomfortable.
Why? What were you uncomfortable? What different things arose for you?
Because I'm thinking about how it affects me, how it affects other people.
So pride probably comes into it, like sometimes our like, oh my God, I can't believe this person I'm with just did something to knock down an entire display at a store, you
Not
know.
only knock down, but might break it. No,
Yes.
but I'm not thinking about paying for it, I'm not like that, it's just like I'm considering the store owner, I mean, she shouldn't be coming around like a cat on, I didn't get angry, but I just, sometimes you have to raise your voice to get them to listen.
Okay,
and
but
she-
see,
and
this
she
is the
was- And she
thing,
was very, you know,
because you couldn't control her.
Huh?
I mean, we really want to look at how much we want to control things. You know? After the fact. You know, it's kind of like, but do things happen? Can you, I mean, like, have you ever been with someone and they do something that, you know, makes everybody stop and look?
I'm usually the only person.
Okay, yeah, me too, I can relate. So, we want to look at what that condition causes to arise in us. You know, are we responding out of fear for someone else to be hurt? Are we responding from, oh my God, this is embarrassing, you know, are they gonna come yell at us? Or, you know, what's gonna, you know, whatever, you know, I mean, fill in the blank kind of thing. Are we responding out of kind of like, oh, I can't believe someone's parents can't do a better job at controlling their kid. You know, I mean, really, we want to look at what we're thinking. You know? And then decide if what we're thinking is helping. You know, helping our own state of mind, or helping the situation, you know. And we usually have to do this after the fact for a little while when we're sitting quietly, to just really look, okay, what was going on for me? You know, why did I get so uptight? And you may not be able to prevent yourself from having that disturbing emotion arise. It's just that we can start to unpack it and recognize that usually it's coming from a place of self-interest, self-cherishing, self-centeredness. You know, this idea that, you know, I really wanted to remove myself from this situation and not be here when this happened, you know? Now, if every time we go out with someone, we get in this situation, we can decide not to spend time with them because we get upset. We don't have to blame them. We can just choose, this is not good for my mind. And we don't share that. We don't call the people up and say, I'm sorry, I'm not hanging out with you anymore, because every time I do, my mind gets really upset, you know, because then it sounds like blaming.
So you're saying you don't have to put yourself in these extreme situations?
Well, I mean,
to put yourself in that frame of mind, like you can avoid it when necessary.
well, I'm saying that if you have this experience with the same people again and again and again,
You're not putting yourself in.
yeah, you don't have to do that if you're not able to, you know, if it just makes you really wish you hadn't done it again. You know, yes, we can set boundaries for ourselves.
Or that horrible person that's
Yeah, yeah, we can choose that. We need to recognize, though, we want to start to recognize that comes from our side. That we're perfectly, you know, it's perfectly possible to sit with someone that we think is really ugly, you know, I mean, speaking wise and angry or whatever, and not let that affect our peace of mind at all. I mean, how do counselors do it? Therapists do it? Psychologists do it? It is possible. to sit with someone with serious, you know, issues and not be pulled into it. But we can, you know, but as long as we are pulled into it, we might want to say, no, I just can't handle this right now. You know, it might be different next year. You know, or after I do some practice, develop more meditation, you know, whatever. But it's this, it's really trying to look within for the causes as well as the solutions to, you know, to like, oh, I could change how I do this or think about this, as opposed to they have to change. Because we can't do anything about them changing. We can choose, I'm not going to be around them because it's not good for me to be around them. You know, that's perfectly reasonable. That's one of the list of the, what, bodhisattva vows or something, you know. Eventually, I mean, the kind of mind we're trying to develop is the kind of mind that can handle whatever anybody throws at us. You know, that we know it's not, it doesn't have to disturb our minds, so that we can be of help to them. You know, but in the meantime, before we've got perfection, you know, but we want to take responsibility for it, not blame the other person. You know, and have gratitude for people who can handle it. You know, thank goodness there's someone out there who can help this person. You know, yes. Oh, wait a minute, somebody else. And did you have your hand up first?
I think I was reading, it might have been Lama Yeshe who said, don't put too much into what people say, the words that come out of their mouth. And if you're with someone that's difficult, just try to rejoice in being in the company of them. So I find that when I'm with someone that's difficult sometimes, instead of really trying to listen too much of what they say, I'll just try to generate the feeling of it's wonderful to be able to be with this person right now.
Okay.
It's helpful.
Yeah, just it was similar thing where I forget what I was going to say. I think that these situations when we need boundaries are really hard because it often involves a close family member. In my case, it does, and I think it's been that the teachings on self-grasping are incredibly helpful because it does help you focus on how that person is showing you where your afflictions are, right? And a little bit, no?
Yeah.
And so you are just aware of these disturbing emotions that arise in yourself, and it's helpful to keep their suffering in mind always. But when that pattern keeps happening over and over again, and it's very painful, you know, you just have to say,
Yeah, I think
I
this
need
is.
a break, or I need some distance, and then it's still hard because you know that the other person is very angry and upset, and they don't understand why, you know, you're distancing yourself. So.
Yeah, it is really hard with that. Were you going to add something in the same line?
Similar, yes. I just noticed in my experience, I mean, I have to look at my ideals in these scenarios because they're always poisonous in the sense that any ideal I make is just an idea. It's not what's actually
Is
going
it
on.
like an expectation?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, it's just like I use the term.
Okay,
Like,
that's what
but
I'm asking.
you know, those expectations, you know, they're crushing to you, even if they're positive, because it puts you in a completely aloof state of mind, and you're going in the wrong direction, away from what is, and back to that expectation or ideal. So I try to notice when I do those.
And this
Yeah.
is the thing. We need. This is why I keep saying we need to look within. You know, that like when it is family members, loved ones that we're talking about that we find very difficult, that we need boundaries around. To me, what that says is you're hoping for someday not to have to do that. whether it comes from theirs, you know, that, whatever, you know, that they're easier to be around, or that you find it easier to be around them, you know. So, you know, it's not that there aren't conditions, obviously, there are conditions that trigger us constantly. So, what we want to learn is to develop a certain stability of a mind within, so it's not so disturbing what's going on around us. And this can take many forms, and we have to just go slowly, 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 you know, so it's, you know, to recognize that we have to stand back and spend a little less time because we get pulled every time, we get hooked every time, and then it gets ugly, you know, so we, you know, we want to, and also we just get tired. And like you said, it's so important to always think of yourself, you know, to have compassion arise. You know, that, you know, if you're having this reaction to them, many other people will be having this reaction to them. And isn't that sad? You know, they're isolating themselves from their behavior. You know, and that's certainly a reason to have compassion for them. So we want to, you know, and then we can also have compassion for ourselves that we're in this situation with them, you know. So it's this, we don't have to leave ourselves out of the picture in the sense of, you know, compassion's an appropriate response for everybody involved, including ourselves. Wow, I find this really difficult. You know, here, you know, I want to be able to help. I have no clue what to do. You know, everything I try doesn't seem to work. Whatever the scenario is, you have compassion for yourself because you're suffering. We don't like to feel helpless. We don't like to feel like there's nothing we can do, or that we seem to always be a condition for someone else to be so upset, or that we can't solve their problem for them. You know, whatever is making them upset. So we can have compassion for them and compassion for ourselves. When we need to when we might want to consider taking time out, so to speak, is when we're getting exhausted, or when we do get hooked and we get impatient or angry, or, you know, whatever. Just a second. Lamo.
Thank you. I could project my voice as much as I can. I was thinking back to last week, what Yancy Rinpoche said, and what you're saying, you know. And when I'm thinking about it, because I really used to think I needed anger, or that it was an armor, especially riding the subways in Brooklyn,
Right.
you know, without that, you know, they are going to get me, you know. And what I realized when you were just talking now is if I do point out, I go, I'm angry at someone, what I seem to be doing is denying that I too can be like that, or am like that I'm part of that anger, that I'm just putting only on the other, when really I'm part of that anger.
Well, and this is where we bring karma into it. So according to the teachings, we can only experience those things that we created the cause for. And so generally speaking, what that would mean is if there's someone difficult in your life, then in some past part of your life or previous life, you've been difficult for someone else. And so now it's your turn. So we don't have to feel like someone's doing something to us. You know, we've done the same thing to others, you know, and it's just about, this is where we can, you know, have compassion. Oh, when I've been really whatever, you know, I've treated others badly. Or if you're really, you know, then, you know, sometimes we get really hooked. And every time we're in a condition that triggers that, you know, we get, you know, out of control with our anger or our fear. And it's very challenging to put a lid on it, you know. And so sometimes other people are in that situation. So respecting our common ground, you know, that we can, doesn't mean we have to stay there and just, oh, well, you know, it just means that treating ourselves as somehow undeserving or, how dare you talk, that's when we're getting into that self-cherishing part. I shouldn't be treated this way. Look around. Everybody gets mistreated. So it's like, yeah, okay. Good luck with that. We really just want to keep, the more we can step back and go and think, it's like with family vacations or something, the more you can kind of step back and think, okay, well, I rejoice that, we got the plan, we got the tickets, that so far everybody's healthy and can go, and then you actually go, oh, everybody's here, but it might rain the whole time, or, someone decides this is a perfect time to act out the whole time, whatever. It's just that if you don't sit there thinking all, for months before the vacation comes, thinking about, oh, it'll be so nice to get away. Well, maybe it won't be so nice to get away. Maybe everything will go wrong. I mean, it's not about really lowering your expectations. It's trying to, every time that daydreaming comes up, to kind of go, I'm not going there. No point in going there, because it really does fuel it makes situations loaded. It becomes, you're ruining my vacation. And then it's, there's just, where do you go from there? It's hard to cope then. But it's really starting to, the more that we can, if we just even notice we're starting to get a little bit agitated, that's that clue. Look inside. Has fear arisen? Has greed arisen? Has disappointment because it's not going the way you want it to go arisen? Look at it so that it doesn't get bigger. Because if we keep suppressing it or ignoring it, then we get, we can get irate, we can get, really down on ourselves. We can trash ourselves. Oh, this is my fault, blah, 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 blah. We don't want to treat ourselves any worse than, anybody else. So it's about really becoming in tune with our responses so that we can start to notice, oh, this is, if I let this continue, I'm going to want to stomp off. Whether I stomp off or not is another part of the deal. But I mean, that might be the clue. I need to step back a little bit from this, and not take this personally. Which is not easy. It takes a lot of reflection and then thinking about it and going, why am I thinking this is personal? They have their whole world they're coming from. They've got everything's pushing, they're exactly in the same spot we are. Every interaction, there's someone who has their own fears, their own greed, their own self-cherishing, their own buttons, all of that is going on. It's in so many cases, it's as if you're not actually having an interaction at all. You have this person having something, and this person having something, and there's not really any interaction. It's just, we really do often make so many assumptions about what's going on about the other person, but they're all being filtered through our perspective, what we want out of the situation, what we don't like, our preferences, our, whatever. And that's going to distort the whole picture, and they are too. They're doing exactly the same thing back. So it really, this is why I think, Rinpoche was talking about, as soon as your mind goes towards wanting to hold back from some disturbing emotion, rejoice. Because it's an amazing thing that we managed to talk at all, in any kind of civil tone. Because inevitably, no one's speaking the same language we are. And so misunderstandings are really easy to have happen. Everybody brings a different need to the picture. And so, it's just like a mess waiting to happen. So the more we can take care of our part so so that we bring a calm, more peaceful, less messy mind to each moment, you know, the better we're going to feel. It's not, you know, whether somebody else does or not. I mean, it often has a tremendous beneficial effect on someone else. The more, you know, self-contained we are with our feelings, and not that we're projecting it out on somebody else. You're making me feel this way. You're doing this wrong. You're doing this, you know, that kind of energy can escalate things. Did you have something to say? Okay. Is your name Tali? Mm-hmm. Okay. Sorry, I would have said Tali, but I wasn't certain. So, speaking of which, why don't y'all introduce yourselves to each other, or at least, you know,
I already
meet someone
forgot
you
your
don't
name.
know,
What was it?
or say hello to someone you know.
Michael. Okay, that was my grandpa's name, so I remember that. Christopher. You know how you say your name in Italian? Miguela. That's how you say it. Miguela. Ooh. I apologize. I got you. No, at 10 o'clock I said to my sister, like I'm supposed to go. And I wasn't working or nothing, just forgot.
Not like here, it's so gorgeous. It's just wonderful.
Wow.
I never know what time it is.
Where were you?
Okay. Who met someone new?
Oh, we had Joy over here.
Hello, Joy, and who do you know?
Steve, but I've seen him for a year and we never.
Got the label. Hey, now you've got a label. I know this person's label. This is Adrian. Adrian, whose label do you know?
I met Joy today, and Kevin, who's
Oh, okay, so Kevin was sitting next to you.
I'll answer to John, first word.
Oh,
I know, I'll answer to anything, you know, hey, you.
Amy?
I'm sorry, so that was Chris,
Amy.
Amy. Amy, who's next to you?
Susan, Judy, Joy.
Okay, I've forgotten already. So Susan, Judy, Joy, Chris, who's in front of you?
Kevin.
Beata.
Yeah, sorry.
Chad.
Meant to me.
Yeah. Okay. So, Francois and Marguerite. Yvonne is at the end?
Katrina.
Katrina's there, okay. So Yvonne, Katrina, Marguerite, and Francois, Judy, Susan, Amy, Chris, Beata, Kevin, Adrian, Joy, Steve, Tally, Lou, Chris, Graciela, Lamo, or Cheryl, Brian, I don't know you. Nicole, oh, I'll be easy to remember. And you are?
Michael.
Michael. Nicole and Michael, that's Jack, and now I'm out.
Mindy.
Mindy. Mindy, who's next to you?
It's my mom, Ingrid. It's cheating.
That's cheating.
We've known each other a
Oh,
while.
I'm not sure you know her better. Mindy and Ingrid, right? And this is Arlene and Jerry. Jerry, who's behind you?
My name is Melissa,
Melissa.
and that's Ingrid, and that's Mindy, and that's Claire, and that's
That's it, okay, Claire.
That's the two Elizabeths.
Two Elizabeths, okay, so we have Elizabeth, Claire, Melissa, Jerry, Arlene, Ingrid, Mindy, Jack, Michael, and Nicole, and Brian, and, okay, all right. All right, so that won't last you, okay. Nothing more impermanent than learning people's names, is there? Okay. So what Yancy Rinpoche sort of started off last week with talking about, he was talking about how we use some prayers, like the 7-limb prayer, which is a standard Buddhist prayer, in order to help us make connections with Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. But he started out saying that we might think we want to escape all human beings, but we want to try using the method that we try to connect with Buddhas and Bodhisattvas with all human beings, and not just with enlightened beings. So the first part of a 7-limb prayer is that you show respect. You know, so it's sort of like you're saying, I don't quite know what I'm doing, you know, but Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are ahead of me on the path, so they seem to know what they're doing, so I'm showing respect to your wisdom, to your enlightened activities, all these kind of things. So how can we use respect to other beings, not enlightened beings, other ordinary beings like ourselves?
I'm going to steal a quote from you.
Okay.
You said one day that there's the solution and not the problem. And that really resonates with me.
Yeah. So one of the teachings says that, you know, if sentient beings, meaning other living beings, are cherishing them is the path to happiness, then what does it say about them? How much we need them?
They're required.
How precious they are.
They're the whole deal, you know? So if we can look at others from that perspective, oh, this is my chance to become whatever, become enlightened, to become kinder, to become more patient, to become more understanding, to become more generous, to become more whatever, you know? If we can see that any interaction we have with someone else is an opportunity for us to rise to the occasion, so to speak, you know, and that this will lead us to happiness. You know, so that's one way we could show respect. It's just a mental attitude. It's not, you know, that we have to act any differently or look any differently towards someone, but in our minds to be able to, you know, in other words, you don't go to work and, you know, give your boss a big hug. You know, that might not be appropriate. That might, you know, you might end up with, you know, a harassment suit. So, you know, we have to behave according to our social conventions. But in our mind, you know, if every time we see someone that we find difficult, that's hard for us to be around, for whatever reason, it really doesn't matter the reason. It's, you know, we know it's a distorted reason. It's coming from our side. But if we can just look, oh, this is this opportunity to expand my good qualities. You know? So that's really flipping our usual attitude on its head. You know, because often what we're responding to, it's like you never see it more clearly to me than when you walk into a Dharma center and you know, and you go, oh, well, I'm new to town and I've just moved in, I came here first thing and da-da-da, and they go, wow, what skills do you have? We could use you. You know, yeah, we have a terrible tendency to be, especially nonprofits, you know, to see what's in it for you. You know, like, oh, is my boss in a good mood today or a bad mood today? You know, in terms for us, not in terms of, oh, are they suffering? You know, it's in terms of, ooh, do I have to watch out? So if we can flip that, and again, we don't have to change our behavior, but just practice that mind of having an open mind to potential. Who knows what's going to happen? You know, but because the more we decide in advance, you know, those self-fulfilling prophecies. That's why we have an expression called self-fulfilling prophecies. You know, we close doors. So that's one way that we could show respect, is just, what's another way? So,
Having an open mind and not having previous thoughts about them or labeling them of any kind.
yeah, so it's sort of like not holding them fixed, as if just because they've acted this way in the past means that they absolutely will act this way every time I interact with them in the future. You know, letting go of whatever the experience was yesterday and being open to whatever the experience is today. Not open meaning, oh yeah, go ahead, beat me up. It's not that kind of openness. It's open to the possibility that they will treat you differently today. This will be a different experience than yesterday. Another way is to recognize our common ground. This is another human being who suffers, who has disturbing states of a mind arise, who has a whole life that I know nothing about, have no clue what's going on in their world, you know, but I do know that they suffer sometimes. So to have sort of a compassionate view of, oh, now our two worlds are coming together in this moment, you know, may I be a condition for happiness. You know, so we can kind of approach it that way. Yes?
I don't know how this like is directly related, but I think there needs to, sometimes if the person is like consistent behavior, that there needs to be a certain level of acceptance from you, the person, because that's who they are. So if you're expecting them to act differently, and they're not, just because of just past experiences, then accept them. That's who they are. So it
Well,
is-
and also if you have it, bring acceptance to the fact, you know, this is another way, that common ground, if we can accept, they're not Buddhas. You know, they might not, you know, they might be Buddhas. We really don't know. But, you know, we can't see them as Buddhas, which means that expecting perfection from them is probably unreasonable. And in fact, any expectation doesn't help. It's more of just, even if, you know, if acceptance brings with you, you know, like this idea that whatever, if it's the same behavior, that, okay, I can handle that. If it's a new behavior, okay, you know, we'll see what unfolds. I mean, you know, it's just not we don't have to pigeonhole people into spots. Any other ways we can show respect? Yes.
What about the idea that you're teaching that says that they were your mother at some point?
Right, so if you're Buddhist, and you consider the fact that we've had beginningless lives, then every sentient being we meet in one of those lives was our mother, because we've had beginningless time. And every time we have a new life, we have parents, you know. So we can look at them as having been incredibly kind to us in a previous life. You know, the ones who helped us when we were completely helpless. You know. So that can be another way to bring an openness to the possibilities there. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know where this fits in, but I know two women, they just always smiling, always. It doesn't matter what you do and what you say, it's two, they don't even know each other. And I just sit there and I try to figure this out, where does that come from? I mean, and it works, it works.
It comes from inner peace.
Oh, they're both, yeah.
It comes
It's
from
true.
this place of, you know, you know, who knows? I mean, we all use different things, but someone who feels kind of that kind of openness where they're kind of joyful, they could have brought it from a past life, but at some time they figured out that peace comes from within. Doesn't matter what's happening out here. You know, that's why you see people smiling in ghettos. That's why you see people smiling in famine-starved countries. I don't know what the adjective is. You know, so
Because why?
because they
Have this inner peace?
they're having from within. Because let's face it, being born is a terminal disease. No matter what happens, the end point is the same for all of us. You know, there's nothing we can do to protect ourselves from never getting sick, never getting old, except by dying young. You know, that's it. So, you know, and we're all in the same boat. It doesn't matter how rich somebody is, how smart they are, how famous they are, whatever. They have the same endpoint we do. So, that's our common ground. So if we come from this place of just wanting to be, may I always be a condition for others' happiness, you may smile a lot. Yes, Jerry?
They're talking about being with people that treat you bad or you don't get along with them. You should really appreciate them because they give you the opportunity to practice compassion and tolerance, and so that's a plus.
It's all, in fact, all of our good qualities come from those conditions. We don't learn them unless someone needs something from us. So it's like the Buddha's sutra on anger, is like, I think I mentioned it before, that, if you meet someone that has kind words, but not so kind deeds, you focus on their words. If someone has unkind words, but good deeds, you focus on their deeds. If someone has no kind words, no kind deeds, you take them home with you and take good care of them because they really need you.
You need that.
And you need them because it's the only way you're going to develop your good qualities. So that's where we want to head. In the meantime, like it doesn't help someone if you take them home and then you want to kill them. You have to go at your pace, when you're ready to kind of expand your circle of concern, you include more people in it. When you need rest, you rest, so that you can come back. We don't want to ever, if we overextend ourselves, we give up. So we want to go at we have to have a healthy sense of where we are, what we can do, and not belittle that, but support it, and then, and recognize opportunities to stretch a little bit, and then, and then regroup when we stretch too far. And constantly, sit down and think about, okay, how did today go? Or how did this incident, that didn't go too well today. And just think about it. What did you bring into it? How could you have responded differently? Not that you can make the situation always go better. It's more of just, if you feel bad, how you can approach a situation so you don't feel so bad. To really kind of take care of yourself, your side. Like if you're afraid, or if you're, feel helpless, or if you feel cheated, or da-da-da, try to take care of those things in your mind. Really reflect on how you could do that. And then seek, like if you just seem to be angry all the time, Buddhism would just say you brought it with you. You've been practicing it from life after life, so you may need to get some, read some teachings, find, might need some help with that. We can't just automatically transform our minds if we don't know how or where to go or even how to approach it. So what we need to first recognize, though, is that we're tired of it. That this is not, we're tired of feeling this way. It doesn't feel good. So all of those things could be something we bring with our attitude when we meet people. I mean, just anything, just kind of, we start in the morning with setting a motivation, we can set a motivation to remember our commonness, our common ground, that we're all human beings that are suffering. And we all have good qualities. We all rise to the occasion, we just don't rise to the occasion every single time. Sometimes we need someone else to do that for us. In step 2 is that we base this, I'm kind of quoting. I'm a terrible typist, so trust me, this is not a transcript. But basically, Beyonce Rinpoche said, basically you hold things gently instead of our usual tight grip, that we sort of like, we don't have to, it's like if we really want a certain outcome, we're holding it with our really tight grip. And if we can loosen that a little bit, other possibilities can happen. Learning how to slow down a little bit. And that doesn't have to be physically, it can just be mentally. You know, to just, you know, like, I remember the first, well, I mean, I'm sure this isn't true, but I remember the first time I remember noticing when someone said to me, oh, I'm gonna have to think about that for a while. Get on with the program here. Yeah. What do you mean you're not? You know, but it was like, oh, okay, that's that's an approach. Oh God, you never know where people start. So, but this is, you know, so you know, we can think about things instead of always having a response. Just like, oh, okay, this is new information. I haven't heard it like this before. And then you go back and you reflect on it. You know, and change how you're viewing it. Because when there's that energy of, I have to do something next, you know, we're not hearing quite as clearly. We can't. Because we're really, part of our mind's already on the next thing. So if we can slow it down by giving ourselves those times when you actually can say, do you mind if I think about that for a while? You know, then you're giving yourself some space. And what do we do when they say no? Oh, well, if you need a decision right now, you have to do the best you can. But we don't have to blame ourselves if, like, in that moment we make a bad decision. You know, we can just kind of go, well, I did the best I could. So this idea of coming with a more gentle, instead of a tight grip, that also has to do with what we, you know, the second step in the 7-limb prayer is making offerings to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So it's a practice of generosity. So you picture, you know, a sky full of fields of flowers and rainbows and sunsets and, you know, everything beautiful, all the, you know, all the delicious chocolate in the world, you know, all that kind of thing. You offer it up, you know, but with each other, you know, it's that kind of thing. How often do we realize if we look when we're, you know, giving something to someone else, there's a contract that's with it. You know, I'm giving this to you, and I hope you're reading my mind because I really expect this in return. You know, and it might not be remotely conscious on our part unless we look back and we realize, oh, you know, I kind of really thought I always, you know, treat them so nicely, you know. I always invite them over to dinner. Surely they're going to invite us sometime, you know. You know, that we actually have sort of this, we're keeping score. So we want to look out for that because that's a setup to not, first of all, you're not really giving. You know, you're just putting a deposit down on what you want back. So you want to look at that because we can really, because people aren't mind readers, first of all. Plus, it doesn't actually grow your generosity because you're not really being generous. There's you know, there's going to be an invoice. So. And then the third step is confession, where you look at all the things you haven't done so skillfully. And this is when Rinpoche started talking about the freedom we can feel in the presence of enlightened beings, you know, because that's who we confess to, enlightened beings. So I think with this, what comes to my mind is that when we think about things that we haven't been skillful with, you know, that we have a sense of freedom with ourselves. That we're not going to judge ourselves for not being Buddhas yet. We're not going to, you know, we're just acknowledging, oh, that wasn't very skillful, You know, maybe I'll be able to do it differently next time. I will try to do it differently next time. But there's a freedom of being able to look at who you are right now, and that's okay. With all of its, you know, good points and bad points, you know, that it's just, you know, that you don't have to hide anything from yourself or enlightened beings. It's okay. The important thing is to look so that you see where you might want to transform, you know. So if you can bring, you know, so like, you know, at the end of the day, it's a really good practice to look at whatever you did that day that wasn't so hot, you know, that you kind of regret, you know, and then kind of acknowledge, ooh, I did that, and I don't think that was skillful, and I may have harmed someone if I did that, or certainly harmed my opinion of myself, or whatever, you know, and then you make a promise to try not to do it again for, you know, 5 minutes, or 24 hours, or, you know, whatever is realistic for you. But then you also look at your day, if all the good stuff, you know, like, ooh, I really held back and didn't yell at the cashier. It was taking too long, you know, and we rejoice about the kindnesses we did, the refrain from harm we did, you know, all of these different things, you know, with a sense of ease, you know, that we can look at ourselves exactly as we are, because there's no punishment there. There's not, you know, it's the only way we're going to be able to see where we want to go, is to see where we are. So, and we're not yelling it to the rooftops. You know, you don't have to go out and say, oh, I've got to tell all my friends what a jerk I was yesterday. No, you don't have to tell anybody. You know, you just need to know that that didn't make you happy, that you acted that way. And that can become the inspiration to try to do better. So. And then when someone else treats you badly, then you can also have that, wow, they're not Buddhas yet. We can be a lot more, you know, I know how that is. I've been there. I treated someone that way, you know, and not be so, you know, not feel like you have to defend yourself in every moment of someone else's bad behavior. So, you know, it's like, yeah, you probably don't deserve it, you know, whatever. I mean, it's just like, but just this kind of openness that this is another human being that's suffering and doesn't do things skillfully all the time. And it may mean that you need to have a chat about it, you know. It doesn't mean we don't communicate, but we don't have to, you know, hold them accountable. You know, that tight grip, and then acting like, well, they're just a bad person. You know, not like me who just has bad moments. They're always bad. You know, that kind of thing. We want to let go of that habit. Yeah, Lama, do you have a question?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we're almost out of time. Anybody have a burning question or comment? Lots to think about. You know, so a way to approach it is just, you know, these are like bookends for your day, to wake up and remember what's important to you and set a motivation. You know, oh yeah, I'm going to try to remember that I don't want to just get through all my chores at work. I'd also like to be nice to the other people. Yes?
I found myself really having a really hard time dealing with guilt. Guilt is really tricky. I've been trying, you know, to meditate a lot on it, but is there any...
Yeah, I think that guilt is, I mean, I think it depends on, of course, your definition. We use the word regret a lot in Buddhism. Regret is an active, just acknowledgement, oh, did something wrong.
Yeah, this is guilt, actually.
Yeah. Guilt is not that. Guilt is this, I am a bad person for having done. This, the Buddha says, is just totally false. But just like when this is that disturbing state of mind that's arising, where you're focusing on the negative of yourself, and you're distorting it. You're making yourself, you know, any negative thing you've ever done much worse than it could possibly have been. And you're also saying, I'm always like this. This is a totally unhelpful habit of mind. You So when we, I don't know if you can meditate on it, but you can meditate on your good qualities. So that when these negative things that you feel bad about having done come up, you can kind of go, well, that's not all who I am. I'm also all of these things, all these other qualities, so that we have a balanced view of ourselves. Because we need a healthy sense of self. We need to feel like, like I'm no worse or no better than all the other people I run into, It's this, guilt is when we grasp on to our negative actions, our negative habits, and say, that's it. I'm permanently like this. And I should feel punished for the rest of my life for having ever done anything bad or whatever. We really want to look at how unhelpful that is. So I used to have that problem. And then, big time, and so then I realized, oh, this is giving me permission not to change. So I need to quit thinking that way, because I feel overwhelmed when I feel guilty. I feel like, oh God, there I go again. I'm never going to get better. I'm never going to do anything, and when you really are trying to change, that gets in the way. So I would have to just reassure myself that doesn't help. It's not that I got over feeling guilty. It's more just, I just ignored it. I kept, when it would arise, I'd just go, that's not true. It's a lie. I'm not listening. Because it is a lie. Now, we can have regret for things we've done and really say, oh, I rejoice that I've learned something from this. I hope to not treat someone else this way, and let it go.
But there is one specific thing.
Well, let's talk about that afterwards, okay? So, we really want to make these distinctions in our minds, that we are not permanently, just because we do something negative, even repeatedly, does not make us that. It means that we have a very strong habit that we're going to have to put a lot of effort into changing, but it can change. That's the beauty of having a mind that's impermanent, that changes moment to moment. We can change our habits of mind.
I'm just going to say that I remember when I was young, I was brought up on guilt.
Yes, it's a common thing.
It's a common thing in our culture. And I remember when I got to India, especially, that whole thought process, it just evaporated. I never felt that at all. At all. And it was a reflection how the culture does not, Tibetans they don't even have a word.
No, they don't have a word for guilt.
And I remember coming back here, it was like, you feel this vibration.
Yeah, we have a culture that.
Like, oh, now I have to work on guilt again, when it's really like a ridiculous kind of feeling.
It's a heavy feeling.
It's a waste of.
Yeah, it gets played out very publicly too.
Yeah. So, we'll keep working on that. So remind me next week that we want to talk about guilt. Because it's so much fun, guilt. So, yeah. Who's not going to show up? Let's have that here. So, all right. So right now, though, we've spent another, all this time this morning, and now it's afternoon. So, on trying to work on ourselves, on working on our minds, how we think, and like at least to consider a new approach or whatever, or just look at what we're doing. This is a really positive activity. If the whole world spent this kind of time, if the whole world could, most of the world doesn't have this kind of time. But it's just, this is how, we put more positive energy in the world by taking responsibility for our little part, because that's important. So, and it's the only thing we actually have much control over is our own little part. So, anyway, so according to the teachings, these place positive potentials on our mind stream that will ripen in positive ways for us in the future. So, every time you eat a piece of chocolate, if you like chocolate, and you go, oh, that's nice. That's the result of some positive action in the past. That's where happiness and suffering come from, according to the Buddha, they are the results of our actions. So So we want to dedicate the positive potentials that we've created today to benefit other suffering sentient beings. So we're going to recite the dedication prayer on page 246. So 246. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid of the limit, with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored to finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be free. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So, thank you very much for your participation.